When you look at, demand recovery, do you see it gaining momentum in the coming quarters?
Well, I actually think OPEC did a pretty good job of moving the market back in April when they signed the OPEC Plus agreement. But looking at where we are right now, we've said in our report today the main theme is that the sentiment is weakening. We saw a big rebound in demand after the what we call the Black April period, but we're starting to see the demand recovery stalling, partly because we have a resurgence of the COVID-19 pandemic here in Europe, and also we're looking on the crude side. We're looking at reduced buying of crude oil by China. So there are some indicators out there that the market is losing a little bit of momentum. And instead of oil prices for Brent looking upwards from about $45 a barrel, where they were fairly stable for the last couple of months or so, oil prices now seem to be looking more in the downward direction, around $40 and maybe below. So we're in for a tricky time in the next few months.
So what does it mean for OPEC? Do they need to return to deeper supply cuts? They started adding a bit of supply. Was that a mistake?
Well, I wouldn't characterize it as a mistake, because the deal that they put together in April was put together at times of enormous uncertainty, and it was a terrific tribute to them and their convening power to get countries such as Russia and other producers to join them in trying to stabilize the market. It does look as if the increase in production which has taken place in August, which was pre-planned, long awaited, no surprise to everybody, it does look as if that higher level of production is coming into a market just as demand growth is starting to weaken. And they, of course, wouldn't have anticipated that when they first made the agreement. So we'll wait and see what they do at their meetings in the next few weeks to see if they decide that perhaps an adjustment might be necessary. But that's not something the IEA is recommending. It's just a question of more supply coming into a market that is perhaps weakening, perhaps unexpectedly.
Neil, overall, we heard from Trafigura saying that actually, the market's going to get worse before it gets better. Just to make sure that I understand your assessment, do you agree with that?
Well, as I said, we think the demand recovery is stalling to some extent, and the supply picture, of course, we're seeing a higher supply. And Trafigura are one of the companies that we've read about who are now chartering ships to store oil. So that is a fairly clear indication that it does look as if the market's recovery is slowing. Whether it's getting worse before it gets better, we can sort of play word games here. But it does look as if the recovery is stalling for now, but the recovery will still continue. There's no doubt about it. It's just it's recovering at a slower pace than we'd anticipated.
Neil, when you look at what some of the companies have been saying, is there a danger that oil consumption, even when we recover from the health crisis and recover from COVID-19, just won't be like it was pre-COVID?
Oh, that's a great question, and of course it's an enormous question that everybody's trying to get their heads around. We've written a box in today's report which discusses teleworking, for example, and trying to understand what the long-term impacts might well be for the fact that a lot of people are still working from home, and a lot of people will wish to continue working from home even when normality resumes.